Okay. All right. While we're waiting for a lot of people to jump on board, I'd like to first of all introduce myself. My name is Jonathan Elseth. I'm a social media um, marketing for the HLAA Boston Chapter, and welcome everyone. And thank you for being here. And I'm going to move on to Carrie Silverman, who is the HLAA Boston Chapter President. So Carrie, if you could unmute yourself and introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Jonathan. So welcome, everyone. At this point, we have 18 of us on the Zoom meeting tonight. We are expecting quite a few more, so indulge us if we have to take a little time over the next 5 to 10 minutes to let others in when they join. So tonight's meeting, the topic is going to be speech reading skills. Our speaker, Suzanne Johnson, who I'll introduce in a moment, comes to us from Rochester and has deep affiliations with the HLAA chapter in Rochester. First, some items on meeting protocol. I'd ask everyone to keep mute on during the presentation. We're going to hold Q&A till the end. And during the Q&A, Jonathan will actually administer that process. We're going to use the raise hand function. So please raise your hand. Jonathan will call on you. And when you are asking your question or when you finish, please put your hand down. For those that desire to exchange information or at the end, perhaps Suzanne's contact, we'll put that in chat so everyone can see that. I do want to mention that we have 1 or 2 students that are supposed to be joining us tonight from Northeastern, where they're part of a co-op program where their 5th year is focused on an internship in the field of study. Olivia and Isabel, I have not seen, I think both of them joined quite yet, but keep an eye out for them if you see them on the screen. They are studying, hearing, hard of hearing and deaf services, and affiliated with the Perkins School in Boston. Okay, with that, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our speaker. So Suzanne Johnson is a licensed, and you see her in your upper right corner, is a licensed and board certified speech pathologist with over 30 years experience in the field. She's worked in acute care, rehab, long-term private schools, and a clinical faculty at both Nazareth and SUNY Geneseo. Did I say that right?
Geneseo, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. She has spoken at the local, the state, and the national levels. Her areas of expertise include working with individuals who are deaf and hard of hearing, and she has served as on the board and president and vice president of the Rochester HLAA chapter. She's also a member of the clergy for the Episcopal Diocese of Rochester, where she leads a ministry focused on accessibility for the deaf and the hearing impaired, hard of hearing. Suzanne owns and operates her own practice currently out of Rochester. So Suzanne, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Carrie. Thanks for that lovely introduction. Yes, I am Suzanne Johnston. I am a speech pathologist, and I thought I might start today just by giving you a little bit of information about my own journey with hearing loss. As Carrie mentioned, I've always worked with individuals with hearing loss throughout my career from day one, as a new grad and new hire in a preschool infant toddler program. On my caseload were 2 young ladies, both deaf. And I learned very quickly, I had to learn very quickly how to communicate with these individuals and their families who are also deaf. And so that was the start of my experience working with people who are deaf and hard of hearing. And throughout my career, when I've worked in other settings, I've always had a special interest in working with individuals with hearing loss. I served as a cochlear implant team speech pathologist at our local university hospital, Strong Memorial Hospital in Rochester, New York. I also have worked, as Carrie mentioned, in deaf ministry for since about 2004, working with individuals in the community regarding access and services for people who are deaf and hard of hearing. I am a longtime member of the Hearing Loss Association that's local to Rochester. It's a very strong chapter in the country. We have upwards of 270 something, close to 300 members right now in our chapter. And when I joined the Hearing Loss Association, I actually was normally hearing. I joined as a professional advisory committee member with expertise in hearing loss. And it was a number of years into my work with the Hearing Loss Association that I developed an acoustic neuroma, which is a tumor on my hearing nerve. And so I lost my hearing as a result of that. So I'm one-sided deafness right now. I feel like a hearing loss nerd because I just went and saw a new audiologist, and he gave me a new hearing aid, and now I'm all excited because I can do wonderful things with my hearing aid, and I've got some better hearing in that ear actually. So I definitely feel like a hearing loss nerd. But along those same lines, welcome to all of you who are here. Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening tonight. I just wanted to check, is everyone here from the East Coast? If you are not from the East Coast, if you could raise your hand. Okay, and where are you from? May I ask? Jerry?
I'm in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Oh, wonderful. So, one of the things, I was president of HLAA as we started our path down COVID, and realized very quickly, because I had been an instructor at the college level, that Zoom was a wonderful tool. And it's so wonderful that we can have people from all over the country attend these meetings and share this information so readily. So great to have you, and great to see all the rest of you here. So without further ado, I just want to move on to what we're going to talk about this evening. That is speech reading 101 is what I call it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And play this. There we go. Can everyone see my screen? Yes. Okay, good. So there's my intro. I am in private practice, and one of the services that I offer is lessons in speech reading. So we can talk more about that later on. So what do I want to accomplish during this program? We don't have a lot of time, but I would like to try and accomplish those items listed here. One is just a definition between lip reading and speech reading. Also, and we'll talk about the differences between those two and how they're the same as well. We'll talk a little bit about the skills that are required, because there are specific skills that we can learn that are required for good speech reading. We want to also talk about understanding ourselves as communicators, as well as the contributions of context and the environment around us and our partners. How to use nonverbal cues and how to use those to support our speech reading. We'll also do a little bit of work on actual lip reading, that is reading sounds on the mouth. And we'll do some practice activities for that, for both speech reading and lip reading. So that's what I would like to accomplish this evening before we have questions. And I think we decided we would take questions at the end today. Is that right, John? I think so. Yeah, Carrie's nodding her head. Yeah. Okay, so let's just go to our first slide, which is a true false. And I just wanted to sort of have you think about your own knowledge regarding speech reading, what you know about speech reading and lip reading. Okay. Let me take that down there. True or false? Some speakers are easier to read than others. What do you all think? You think yes? I'm gonna actually use some signs. That's easy. I'm very standard for me, but yes, absolutely. That depends on a lot of things. First of all, facial hair, whether you're an adult or a child, etc. So yes, there are definite differences. Some people tend to sort of talk with their head down. Other people have their face sort of more open. Some people are better articulators, right? So there are definite differences in the people that we speak with. Is it easier to read single sounds than words? True or false? It's definitely harder. Why is it harder? Because we have less context to use. So that's false. All consonants are equally easy to lip read. True or false? So consonants occur in different places on the mouth and in the mouth. So some consonants like B or P are very easy to see. Other ones like K, G, very difficult to read. So you have big differences there. And we have to consider those differences when we're lip reading. Learning to read the speaker's mouth is the first step in lip reading and speech reading. True or false? False. And this is why we use the term speech reading, because it's all about the bigger picture and then narrowing it down to lip reading. So the first thing that we need to do is think about what's happening in the context that we're in. We talked a little bit about this next one. Children are easier to lip read than adults. No, children are hard to lip read. They speak quickly, they turn away, very difficult. They speak. Maybe the sounds that they use are not quite as clear as adults use. So yes, that is false. Communication context plays a significant role in lip reading. Absolutely. As I said, the primary role in lip reading. So that's true. Speech reading is a skill you can learn with practice and knowledge. Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. I think there are some other qualities that people have that allow them to be better learners, but with practice, you can learn to be a better speech reader, lip reader. And the last one, developing speech reading and lip reading can help reconnect you. Of course, yes, that is true. It's reconnecting us by being able to communicate with each other better. And of course, that's always a good thing. So let's move on. So there's some, just giving you a basic feel for how much do I know about speech reading and lip reading to begin with. Whoops. Let's go there. Okay. I'm wondering if I can minimize this a little bit. There we go. Hearing loss and comprehension of speech. So let's talk first of all, how our hearing loss affects our ability to understand speech. First of all, the most obvious, the loss of the auditory signal, right? We can't hear what we used to hear. So that's going to affect what we understand. Some other things to think about, though, include some of the other challenges that we might have in combination with our hearing loss that impact our communication skills. We may have physical challenges. Maybe we have some other health-related challenges that change the distance between myself and my partner. Or maybe I'm an older person. Many people over the age of 60 have hearing loss. A large population often also have visual loss. So if I don't have such good vision, I'm going to have a harder time seeing you, or maybe if the light is dim. So that's going to contribute to my worsening comprehension, right? And also, as we get older, we may have co-occurring cognitive challenges. We know that normally our processing of information, our processing of auditory information, that is what we hear, but also processing of other environmental information gets slower. So now, I don't know if you ever have felt this, but sometimes in a group of people, I'm understanding what someone 2 comments ago said. I'm just getting that because my brain is finally figuring it out, but the group is already way ahead of me. So that is something else that occurs as you get older, in addition to when you have hearing loss, which affects your auditory processing. So these all have impact on our comprehension skills. What can we expect? Obviously, I'm sure many of you have had these feelings, as I have had as a person with hearing loss. Anger, just get irritated at my hearing loss and at other people. And also just irritation with the sound around me. I take my when I get home at night, I take my hearing aid out. I can't stand to try and listen with that hearing aid. So anger, frustration, obviously. When you can't understand, you can't follow a conversation, you have to ask someone, what did they say? Oh, I didn't catch that. Very frustrating. Depression. You begin to isolate yourself, right? When everything gets very difficult. So these are all challenges that we want to learn to fight with as many ways that we can to be better at communicating and comprehending. So again, lip reading can offer that reconnection to our environment and to the people around us. It can reduce some frustration. It can reduce that sense of isolation and improve our communication skills. So speech reading training is a process that we do as a speech pathologist. You can also do a lot of this on your own. And I always encourage, and we'll talk about some websites. I'm going to give you some addresses a little later on, some websites that you can access where you can practice some of this on your own on the web. You can also do it in reality in the context of your communication. But you should try and do it deliberately with intention. So we're doing some of this already. We're talking about developing awareness. Not just of the communication situation, but of you as a communicator. Are you the kind of person before your hearing loss? Were you a passive communicator? Were you a listener? Or were you an active communicator? Were you the kind of person that would reach out to people if you didn't understand? Or would you just be quiet and live with it? So those are important differences in how we are as a communicator, and they do impact what kind of lip and speech reader we can be as well. So reflecting on our own habits and skills. Am I a good speech reader baseline, or do I need a lot more practice? Some people are really pretty good at speech reading. Other people, like myself, I'm not a good speech reader, even though I have worked teaching other people how to speech read. I haven't done a lot of it on my own, and that's probably one reason why. Plus, my hearing loss was later developing. So The other third level here is identifying easy and difficult listening situations. So looking at the situation and the context is important, that we be reflective of that to help us, to support us in being a better speech reader. And then the final area that we look at is formal speech reading lessons. Again, I can give you some websites where you can do some of that on your own, but this is something that's another arm of learning about speech reading that's an important piece. And that's all done, at least in my context, in speech pathology, we have hierarchies of listening. That is easier listening situations and harder listening situations. And so working through those. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right, I just want to also clear the air here. Speech reading and lip reading, are they the same thing? Not quite, but the sort of more old-fashioned term is lip reading, and that seemed to encompass everything. The British actually still use the term lip reading to talk about both speech reading and lip reading. In the United States and in some other countries, we tend to split those two into two different areas where, again, lip reading is reading these sounds on my mouth. That's reading my lips, right? Versus speech reading, which is a more contextual approach to different aspects of communication that has to do with predicting language, looking at context, looking at the type of situation that you're in. And those are two different kinds of skills, and we want to use them hand in hand. One, lip reading is a bottom-up skill that is bit by bit. And speech reading, understanding the big picture, is what we call a top-down skill or a synthetic skill, putting all the pieces together. And in working together, we work in both directions to the middle. We work on this and we work on the big picture. Okay. What are some of the skills that we use for speech reading and lip reading? Obviously, we're going to use auditory input as much as we have. And for some of us, that may not be much. For others of us, it can be quite a bit. I was really surprised. I was telling you, I just got a new hearing aid, and I have a moderate to severe loss in my one ear, my left ear. And I really don't hear much without any kind of aid. But when my audiologist tried my sentence recognition with some amplification, wow, it came out at 85%. I was really impressed. And I think that's because I do so much work trying to hear with that ear, right? So that auditory input is important, even though it may not be much. It can give us a lot of good information. Obviously, visual cues, watching your speaker, the gestures that they might use, their position, you know, are they facing you or are they to the side, etc. I'm going to move this over here. Hang on a second. There we go. Just helping to interpret the message and whether or not you're accurate, or maybe you're not accurate in interpreting the message. Context cues, the ease of your communication. Is it, where are you? What time of day? What's happening? Who are you talking to? What's the situation? That's really important to help predict. World experience. One thing that we know about speech readers and lip readers is that those with more cultural, environmental, world experience are generally better at speech reading because they have more foundation, more experience to draw upon. Okay, so that's an important factor. And then primary language. Are you lip reading a person who speaks Northern American English? Or are you trying to lip read someone from India who speaks English, but in a very different way? Okay. And I'm sure many of you will say, It's hard for me to understand people with accents, right? And it's not just what you hear or the amount that you hear to understand and the rhythm of their speech and the emphasis and the sounds that they make, but it's also how their mouth shapes those sounds. So that can have a lot of, a big impact on how we use some of the skills that we use for conversation. Obviously, other helpers. Lip reading doesn't occur in a vacuum. Lip reading or speech reading also relies on your hearing technology, cochlear implant technology, assistive listening devices, ALDs can be very helpful. I know my audiologist was pushing a Roger pen. Do you guys know what a Roger pen is? Yeah, some people do, maybe not others, but it's a little personal microphone that you can use that sends direct input to your ears like a T-coil would. Very, very wonderful technology. Obviously, another helper is someone who knows about speech reading and speech reading training. Not absolutely necessary, but it certainly is helpful if that's, the direction that you want to go. And then self-advocacy. We know that people who advocate for themselves, excuse me, are much more successful speech readers and lip readers. Okay. So when we put all these skills together, and that's the key, is not just relying on one, not just relying on our hearing or audition that we have remaining, not just relying on lip reading, but also relying on other cues. So I just did a little math problem here. If we use all these skills, let's say lip reading recognition, we can get maybe 45% of what that person is saying. Hearing wise, we might get 20%, and these are just numbers I just pulled out of the air, but as an example. And with the context cues that we also have, maybe that supports us about 15%. So potentially we may have, as much as 80% comprehension during that task. So using all those skills together is really important. We don't rely on just one or the other. I don't know why this is so large, this slide, but anyway, it says, what do you and your partner bring to the table? This is really important. We talked a little bit about this a few minutes ago. We know that people who are risk takers are better at lip reading. Why is that? Because they may make more guesses? Oh yeah, go ahead, John. Go ahead. You had your hand up there. Did you want to answer that?
I just clicked that by accident.
Oh, okay. All right, I'll give you the answer then. So anyway, they may ask more questions. They may make more attempts. They may be better at self-advocating, right? Oh, you need to slow down, or I'm having difficulty. Can you say that again? Or let's move over here to somewhere where I can see your face better. Those kinds of people, self-advocates and risk takers, are better at more successful communicators. How long you've had your hearing loss? So some people would say, well, I just developed this hearing loss. I've had good hearing for years. I should be better at speech reading. No, people who have had long-standing losses are actually usually better. Why? Because they have more experience at lip reading, right? Longer experience. How well do you know your partner? It's always easier to read your partner than it is to read people who are unfamiliar to you, right? Not just the sound and the rhythm of their voice using your audition, but also what does their face look like when they're saying something? What kinds of things do you talk about on a regular basis? We'll talk about familiarity a little bit more later. And again, are you good at self-advocating? We talked about that a little bit already. And personality, fast talkers, someone that you're talking to talking like this, and they just kind of just go on, and they're just talking really fast, and it's really hard to pick out each word, right? Or is that person very expressive to you? Are they giving you a lot of nonverbal information that lets you sort of see what they might be communicating, right? So very different kinds of talkers. Are you impatient? Is that person impatient? That's important too. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about predictions that are based on the context of what we know about a situation. These are the foundational principles of lip reading. We first have to figure out what's the context. What kinds of words and vocabulary or sentences might I hear in this context? And we're going to practice this in a few minutes, okay? So first of all, you want to consider the overall theme of the interaction, where you are. You know, are you at dinner? Are you in a restaurant? Or are you at the doctor's office? You're going to expect to hear very different things in those different contexts, right? So first of all, predicting what kinds of things would we hear, for instance, at dinner? What might people say at a dinner? Somebody throw something out there. Nothing? So maybe at dinner, you're going to hear something like, what would you like? All right. Or, wow, that's good. I like it. Right. Versus the doctor's office, which is maybe something like, oh, the doctor will see you now. All right. You can predict those kinds of things that are going to come up. Now, obviously, you can't predict everything that's going to be said, but you sure can accomplish a lot. So that context of where you are is important. What are you doing during that time? Are you in a restaurant talking about a sushi dish? Or are you talking to your doctor about some personal health issues? So again, that context. How easy is it to see your partner, right? I put a little bit of lipstick on tonight before I started, not because I'm vain, but because it's important for me to have you see my mouth, right? Now, I'm not asking the guys to do that, but being aware of, oh, if I've got facial hair, that person may be harder, may have a harder time understanding me if that person has a hearing loss, right? That's one fact that we know. Also, the lighting. And we know all these things, I'm sure, from your HLAA chapter as well as mine. What are tips for hearing loss? Lighting is really important, being able to see the person's face, their mouth, etc. Are you close? Are you facing them? Okay. What words or phrases might you encounter? There's a couple of examples there. And familiarity with the vocabulary that you might be seeing on somebody's mouth. What does that look like? Medications. That's different than tuna casserole, right? So just familiarity with what you can expect to see on the face. And the depth of the conversation. If you're talking about, how wonderful dinner is, that's a much more sort of superficial kind of conversation versus something like how to develop a lesson plan, very technical oriented, right? So that's important too. And you may find that for those technical conversations, you need to have a lot of personal knowledge about what you're talking or what you're going to be listening to versus dinner conversation, which is typical just about anywhere you go. Okay. All right. Predictions based on facial and other cues. So we want to think about, and I've got my little picture down there. If you remember the movie Home Alone, that was an iconic kind of facial expression and gesture that that child used to communicate what? Fear and surprise, right? And we use our body in nonverbal ways to communicate a lot, probably a lot more than you think. As you can see, in my case, I'm using a lot of head nods this evening, right? Some people are not so much that way, but that's going to be helpful if you can pay attention to that. Head movement, arm movement. We always make jokes about people who are Italian that use their hands like this, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. Where you are in space, your body position, that's going to be important. Facial expressions. So one thing that we know about facial expressions, for instance, when people are learning sign language, not that I'm asking anyone to learn sign language here, but one of the factors that they found is that learning sign language, very important to use appropriate facial expressions to convey intention. So, surprise, eyebrows up, question, furrowed brow, or a smile, whatever. So that can tell you a lot about what someone is communicating, right? For instance, some examples. I don't understand you. What does that look like on somebody's face without using those words? I don't understand you. What does that look like? It looks like this, kind of like, huh? Right? Or what? Are you kidding? Eyebrows up, kind of a open, big, wide open eyes, maybe an open mouth like our friend down here on the slide. Or this kind of facial expression, nodding yes, sort of a calm, agreeable facial expression to communicate. Oh, I really agree with you. Oh, I really think that's true. All right, so watching those other kinds of cues. We're going to move back over here. Okay. Reading lips or lip reading, words on the mouth. So I'm going to, again, make the difference, talk about the difference between lip reading and speech reading. Okay. So lip reading is actually what's happening on my mouth. One thing that so let's talk a little bit about speech, right? Speech and what we see and hear and how they match up. We know that most auditory information that people hear and recognize is delivered in vowels that we use. So if you turn the volume way down on your TV and all you can hear is vowels, you'll probably catch most of the words. A lot of that information about the word is carried in vowels. The only trouble with that is that vowels are really hard to distinguish if we're just looking and we don't actually hear them. Vowel shapes are usually in the middle or the back of the mouth. Some are on the front, like ooh, right? But a lot of them are sort of in the middle of the mouth, like eh, ah. They all kind of look the same, right? So that's a challenge. What we need to do is think about, ooh, is there a little drop in the jaw for or is there a smile on the lips a little bit for E? Okay, so those subtle differences are important. What will help more is learning how to discern consonants, because consonants can be seen more easily. Again, they do also happen in different parts of the mouth, and we talked about some of those consonants like B, B, M, M, P, P. Very easy to see. We can also get some information for sounds like F or V, or even we can see the tongue moving for T, T, and the jaw dropping, or D, D, right? The K and the G sounds are much more difficult because they're very far at the back of the mouth. G. You don't see a lot of difference there. So there are, and it's good to recognize what are the ones that I should be able to see. And if I see them, what consonants could those be? We know that this is not a K or G because we can't see K or G, right? So being able to predict what those consonants are. And we talked about those bilabials, BMP, the fricatives, and the tip dentals, which are the S, the F, the sh, j, z, all those, and then the velars in the back of the mouth. Okay, we also want to pay attention to the opening of the mouth, the jaw opening. Ah, and I, that shape, right? Or the lip spreading, E, or A. And again, the pursing, ooh, or O, right? So I'm going to give you, let's just do a quick practice here. And I'm going to say, without any sound, I'm going to say a vowel. And you can tell me what vowel it is. Whoever wants to throw their hand up. Maybe, yeah, I can't see everybody. So just shout it out. All right. So here's the first one. Ready? What vowel is that? What sound is it? Who can tell me? You can unmute yourself and just shout it out.
Do it again.
It's E. You're right. So there's that spread of the lips, right? What about this one? Here's the next one. Ready?
I.
It could be I. I would be open and then closing like this.
The A.
Yeah. So you see, but this one is just ah, right?
Ah.
All right. Here's the next one.
Ooh. Ooh.
Good. And that's that lip rounding that you see. So now see, you're already experts at determining what vowels we're saying. So that's an example of doing it. And that's a good practice. You can do this with your spouse or your friend. Have them say some things to you without sound. Say, am I able to do that? You'd be surprised. Sometimes people come in here and they say, oh, my hearing is so bad. I can't understand anything anybody's saying. And I've never tried lip reading and I don't know what people are saying. And I'll give them some test sentences and they get 50% accuracy first time around without even any teaching. So you'd be surprised at what you can pick up. All right. So give it a go. All right, consonants. Let's do the same thing with consonants. Which consonants are made on the lips, which are made with the tongue tip, which are made in the middle of the mouth, and understanding how those put together can make words, right? So I'm just going to do a sound and you can tell me what sound it is, all right? Ready? Here's one. What was that?
Ba.
Yeah, ba. Yep, that's a B sound. And notice that I'm talking about sounds, not letters. And I like the fact that you answered as the sound and not the letter. Those are different things, two different things. Here's another one.
Ta.
That one's a little ta. Good. That's a little bit harder, but yeah, good. Here's another one.
The ra.
Ka.
That was ka with a K sound. Very good. Here's another one.
V. Ba.
V or F. Very good. Nice. So now again, you're already experts at looking at those sounds on my mouth. Now, that's just one sound. It's a little bit different when you're talking about whole sentences, but those are great that you've been able to do that so far. Those are good basic skills. So what do we need to do as lip readers or speech readers? We put all those visual cues together and we work in hierarchies from not just the sounds, but also words, then into phrases, short sentences, then from phrases to sentences, And then familiar and unfamiliar, so that's important too. Reading a familiar phrase like I love you is much easier than, which is what are you doing this weekend? You probably hear that a lot less, or hopefully you hear that less. Hopefully you hear I love you all the time. Again, working within these hierarchies. All right. So I want to do a little exercise here. We're going to think about 3 different scenarios, okay? One is going to be a doctor's office. The second one is going to be going to the grocery store, what you might hear in a grocery store. And then the third one will be having a problem with the car, okay? So I'm going to practice saying some sentences, and I want you to see what you can come up with for possible answers based on what you see. All right. Now I want you to think first, what are some things, for instance, that you might hear at a doctor's office? Example, somebody tell me, what do you think you might hear at a doctor's office?
Can I get your healthcare card, your insurance card?
Yeah, I need your insurance card, or the doctor will see you now, or what time is your appointment, right? Thinking about what's usually said in that context. And that might be more predictable in a doctor's office than some other places. What about a trip to the grocery store? What kinds of things would you hear in a grocery store? Maybe food words, right? Or words to do with staff, people in the store. A problem with the car, you're probably going to hear money words, right? To do with how much something is going to cost or what the problem might be. You might hear car type words like parts of the car, the wheel, the steering, the carburetor. Okay, so thinking about what those might look like on the mouth. All right. So there we've just done our little speech reading exercise. Predict what you might hear. Again, it's not exclusive. There are going to be things said that will kind of knock you out of the water, but you've got a good foundation. So let's do a couple of these. I'm going to give you some sentences that you might see in the doctor's office. And let's see how many of you can get as many words as possible. And one thing that we know about speech reading is you'll often miss words, right? But you can get the general gist of the sentence to fill in. So you're not going to get every single word. Kind of like finger spelling when I've learned about finger spelling. Finger spelling words for ASL. You don't see the whole, each letter. You just see a mass of letters and you put them all together. Same thing with speech reading. So, all right, here's the doctor's office, and I'm going to say something, and someone just shout out if you know what I'm saying or think you might know what I'm saying. Anybody know any of those words?
But what kind of medication you on?
Very good. What kind of medication are you on? Very good.
Oh,
And the
great.
key word there was, you can see that's a long word, right? And it starts with an easy letter, the M. So very good. Nice job. All right, here's another one for the doctor's office.
How are you feeling?
Yeah, and what gave you that impression? Part of it is my question face. How have you been feeling? Kind of tip my head to the side. So you're getting not just this information, but also the overall picture of what I'm saying, right? All right, let's go on to the grocery store. Those are great. You guys are good. Trip to the grocery store. Here we go.
Can I help you find something?
Very good, Carrie, nice, perfect. That was every word I just said. Good.
Think you said debit. No,
No, all right, I'll
Something
say
about
another-
bags.
that's kind of a long one. Here, I'll say it again.
Something about bags.
Do
Yep.
you want,
Paper or plastic?
do you want this in a paper bag?
In a separate bag. Very good. You want this in
I
a
was just
separate
about to
bag.
say that.
Yeah, good. Yeah, paper or plastic would have been another one. Very good. Nice. Okay, let's go on to the problem with the car. Okay. Um, Anybody?
We have to order your parts?
Very good. We have to order a part. Very nice. Good. And how about this one?
I got that, it'll be $1,000.
Everybody knows that one. Okay, good. Yeah, so there you go. There's some examples of being able to think about what kind of things might I encounter in this environment. And based on what I'm seeing, I can sort of put two and two together and figure out what's being said, right? And those, again, the depth of the conversation, those are fairly superficial conversations. But they are everyday kinds of things that you experience. So what do we know about speech reading and lip reading? Again, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. You've got to practice. It has to happen in context. If you find a partner or a buddy that you can do it with, that's always really helpful. Using a trusted partner, someone that you're not going to be embarrassed with. And the other thing that you want to do if you're practicing is not over practice. So I really am careful not to over exaggerate what I'm doing with my mouth. Because that creates like a sort of a fake look to what's going on in your mouth, and it's harder. So having someone that is comfortable with you and doing it with you on a regular basis. You can use resources around you. So turning your TV off, plus the captioning, turning the captioning off, and seeing what you can gather in a conversation between two people, maybe. You would want to start with an optimal situation, maybe not a lot of background stuff going on, but like a simple conversation between two characters where you can see both their faces. You can try doing a little practice lip reading there. Have somebody read out loud, or watching yourself read out loud in a mirror, right? You can do TED Talks, which they usually have a camera pretty close to a speaker on a TED Talk. They do tend to wander around a bit, but usually the camera is pretty close to their face and you can see, and they also, people who are good speakers do tend to use a lot of gesture, and people who are doing TED Talks are good speakers, top of the line speakers. So often they use a lot of other aids to convey, and also because you know the topic ahead of time, right? Each TED Talk has a specific topic, so that helps you with prediction. YouTube, little short YouTube videos, etc. So using those resources can be helpful. There are web-based programs and resources for training. There are training courses that you can take for a fee, usually. I'm going to, in a minute, show you a couple of free websites or partially free websites. And of course, you can always get professional assistance with specialists, speech pathologists who work in oral rehab, AURAL, not oral, ORAL, but oral, AURAL, rehab, who know about speech reading and lip reading and how to support people and teach them how to do that. And I think, here we are. Okay, So practice reading sounds. Now I'm gonna change my screen a little bit. There are a couple of websites here that I mentioned, which are good ones. One is Lipreading Practice. These are all out of the UK. I think both of them are out of the UK, out of the United Kingdom. They're very much into lip reading and speech reading in that country. They figure it's very important, so they have a lot of resources available to people. And these sites provide sample video exercises without audio. So just specifically for speech reading, and they have all kinds of contexts. Let's see if I'm going to stop. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing for a minute and see if I can pull up the website and then share again. Hold on. Okay, so this is the lipreading.org website. It has a lot of great information. They have lip reading videos for different kinds of sounds. They have beginner's guide to lip reading, looking at how you can practice your lip reading skills. They have, again, different contexts. I think you have to pay for these topics here that they have. Other resources in terms of information for parents or family members. They have skills such as syllables, short words, common words. I'm not sure if I can see if I can click on any of these, if I can do a play here. So here's our little video of a woman who's saying a word, and you have to enter the word, right? So what do you think that word is? She just said, can everybody see that? Bowling. Now bowling is like bowling. Watch, see my mouth when I say that? Bowling. You're close though. This is a single syllable word.
Thought it was bone.
One syllable. So I'm going to type in here bone, somebody said. And you got some points, a score 120, and it gives you 10 trials. So that's a cool little website. The other one is again, out of the UK, and they have all these different, well, there's deaf awareness, information for the hard of hearing, how to use the exercises, introduction to lip reading here, and then different practice contexts. Let's see, we'll go to word practice. So here we go. And they have all their words broken down into different kinds of words, like words that have NG in them. Okay. And they give you a whole laundry list of words that you can practice with. So that's just an example of the kinds of videos or kinds of websites that you would have available to you that are just free. And there are others on the web as well. Those are just a couple. Okay. And I think that is going to be my last slide for today. So I wanted to be sure I left a little bit of time for questions. Yep. So I'm just going to stop sharing, and maybe we can open up the forum for some questions from people.
Yes. So I have a couple of DM questions that was directly to me, and one of them asked, which is a very interesting question. At the beginning of when you talked about lip reading, somebody asked, what about regional direct? Someone from deep in Mississippi versus Southie. from Boston, which is very interesting because sometimes when you do a lip reading, but it's also the accent that they bring out. So
Absolutely. So, yeah, that's a great comment. We know that people from the South, Mississippi, wherever, deep South, they tend to have that drawl, right? And so their vowels are formed in a slightly different place in their mouth, and also the rhythm of their speech is different. So that it's like listening to, at least for me as a Northerner, it's like listening to someone with a foreign accent, right? So
right,
even though we get mad at our hearing loss and we say, oh, I can't hear a darn thing, you do actually pick up quite a bit of information in terms of rhythm and stress, auditorily very often for most of us. And even if you don't understand the words specifically, you are picking up a lot of information that you may not even be aware of. So, and that's part of the problem when you're listening to a foreign speaker, is that their rhythm and stress and cadence and even their volume might be different. So for instance, someone from Japan, Japanese people tend to speak much more quietly. Their head tends to be down, right? So even those little behavioral differences, cultural differences, do impact how we understand people with accents. And people from the South definitely have an accent for sure.
excellent, excellent. Yeah, that's a very good answer. Basically, what people say questions like that, and a lot of people would use one of those closed captions app just to make sure what are you talking about because your accent is different. So they use the app to communicate, especially when it comes from a different country as
Right,
well.
right.
So,
Yep.
so
hmm
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's important too that we advocate, even though people are maybe speaking English, we don't understand them. So just being an advocate for ourselves as a listener, is important. Yep. There's a lot of great apps out there too that you can have on your phone, like Translate, Google Translate, etc. They're amazing.
Yeah.
That can be really helpful. Mhm.
Another question before we go to Carrie. Um, Another question somebody asked me, which is another interesting question, because I think that we all deal with during the pandemic and all of us wearing the mask. How do you communicate with somebody wearing the mask?
Yeah, that was huge. That was huge. And I was glad that I was not president of HLAA when we were in the midst of COVID, because that was a disaster. And I will say that people sort of ran back into their shell because it was so frustrating. So with masks, of course, you can't see anything. You rely completely on your hearing. That's the only thing that you have, right? And that just goes to show how much people with hearing loss actually rely on the nonverbals, right? On what's happening on the mouth and all the other stuff, right?
Yes, yes,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely, that was very tough. And the last question before we go to Carrie, somebody asked, because it's so easy to read lips when you talk to somebody, what about when it comes to the phone conversation?
yeah.
Not FaceTime, phone conversation.
Right, on the phone. Again, it takes this whole speech reading piece out of it, and that's a challenge. Now, of course, now we have some great aids that can have streaming right to your hearing aid, and that's great. You can hear sound like it's, just streamed right into your ears, and that's helpful. But yeah, you don't have the visual, so that's problematic. I use FaceTime and WhatsApp all the time on my phone.
Likewise. I
Yeah,
got WhatsApp, emails, texting, FaceTime. You do wherever you can to make yourself comfortable and accessibility to communicate with your friends, family, co-workers, etc.
Right. And the other thing is, when I'm using a phone, I always put it on speaker. Because using it on one ear doesn't necessarily help, but with a speaker, you get sound to both ears, and that can be helpful. You're getting two signals instead of one. So that can be helpful. Also, sometimes if I'm talking to someone that is close to me, I'll have my husband listen in and I'll ask him, what did they say? What did she say? I didn't catch that. So he can be my speech buddy or my listening buddy in those contexts.
I mean,
Yep.
especially when it comes to somebody that you are familiar with, so you're okay doing a phone conversation with a person that you're familiar with.
Oh, yeah. And I have to say, speaking about people who are familiar, when I'm on the phone, I'm almost to the point of being rude sometimes. I feel sorry for the people who have to talk to me. But, you know, a lot of these telemarketers are from another country and they speak super fast and you have no idea what they're talking about. And I will stop them and say, tell me that again. Today I said, can you spell that for me? Because I'm not getting that word. So yeah, being very, really self-advocating for what your needs are and what's going to enable you to understand what people are saying. Really important. Mhm.
So it looks like we have two questions. We'll start with Carrie, if you could lower your hand and unmute yourself and what is your question?
Thank you. So just so many things you just spoke through resonate, with me. And I guess the question I wanted to ask was emotion. When emotion is in a conversation, I find myself struggling much more because there tends to be, a demonstrations of faith and hands and, a stomping, whatever, whatever is involved. I think grandkids, my husband, my mother, a whole range of, different cues that go with emotion. And I find I struggle
Mhm. Yeah,
more in those situations because I get
Understandable.
distracted,
right.
from my focus
Understandable.
on the faith.
Yeah, exactly. I call that communication chaos, right? Your brain is so kicked in emotionally, or maybe the other person's brain is kicked in emotionally, or maybe both. And you don't communicate in a normal way. So we know that optimal communication is two people facing each other and speaking at a normal rate or maybe even a little slower. And being able to focus on the conversation and analyze it at different levels. When you're emotional or someone else is emotional, that's all out the window, right? So yeah, it's the worst possible time to try and communicate. And I think,
And just one other thing that struck me was as I was listening, I was initially focused on, learning for me, as a hard of hearing person, how do I improve my skills? But I've also realized spending more time around people, with hearing loss, that it's not just hearing, it's speaking.
mhm,
That
it's
the
the whole
awareness,
communication thing, right?
right?
Mhm.
So I have to both increase my skills for myself, and I have to improve my speech for, the folks that I'm working with. So dual
Yeah.
benefit.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you mentioned that because communication is a two-way street. It's not, as a person with hearing loss, it's not all about what's important to me. It's also about sharing our shared experience as communicators, right? It's not just about my needs, but it's about what we need for each other. In the communicative, whatever we're doing, whatever we're talking about, or whatever situation we're in. It's how we communicate, not just what do I need as a person with hearing loss. So it's easy to be selfish kind of as a person with hearing loss and say, well, I need you to speak louder, or I need you to face me. And not always consider the other person's needs. So I think it's really important to, if you're looking for positive interactions, that you be sensitive to what both parties need. And share in that, to be on the same page. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Yeah. And it looks like we have another question from Margaret. So if you could lower your hand and unmute and please ask a question.
Okay, thanks. This goes back to something that was being said. It's a comment, and then I have a question. Everybody who has a modern phone, Apple, Android, if you go to accessibility on your phone and then live captions, you can do live captions. Turn it on, turn live captions on, and then when someone calls me, there's this little icon that's always on my phone, and I open it up, and what you say, if you're calling me, is transcribed into English for me, and I can read what you say. And even with using speaker, most of the time, the phone is my enemy. But with this device, this feature of the phone, it's become much easier.
That's great.
I just wanted to share that.
Yeah.
And then my question is, I'm a retired psychologist, and a lot of my training had to do with eye contact. And to be a better speech reader, I have to focus on the lips and not the eyes. And how did you navigate that challenge? Because I imagine part of your training was eye contact as well.
Absolutely. Because there's a lot of meaning that comes through eyes, right? But what we do know, and again, this goes back to studies about nonverbal or non-spoken speech, or ASL. And that is that people, especially people with hearing loss, they don't look necessarily at the eyes. It's not isolated. They're looking at this whole space here. And for people who are deaf, it's even bigger. It's usually this, because this is the area that people sign in. But yeah, so eye contact is important in what you do with your eyes. But really, people are watching this whole mask of your face as a whole, not just the eyes. So we know human behavior focuses on, matter of fact, they've done a lot of research on this. When we're making eye contact with someone, where do our eyes go to? And they go not just to the person's eyes, but all over. And it's usually this part of their face and their eyes as well. So, yeah.
Same thing when it comes to people with ASL, or when they're doing sign language, they're just not using their hands, they're also sharing their facial expression too, so you have a better understanding what they're talking about when they're sharing their facial expression.
And frankly, as I said, you know, I learned about deafness early on, and I felt that in some way the universe prepared me to have hearing loss, because I knew a lot about deafness and hearing loss before I had hearing loss myself. But sometimes I find deaf people, or people who speak in a visual language, are easier to understand, because they have more emphasis on what's happening in their body and on their face than a lot of hearing people who just kind of blah, 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 you know, nothing. So it's an interesting contrast. Yeah.
And there's one more question I got from somebody. You mentioned it earlier with your hearing aid. The question is, what hearing aid brand do you have?
Oh, my new hearing aid I actually had a cross hearing aid for years, a cross system. And so, and with a cross system, it was a Starkey system. And that I had one aid on my bad ear that delivered sound to my good ear, but it did not amplify anything in my bad ear at all. And that was okay. Didn't give me a lot of benefit, but I kind of lived with it. I thought, well, this is it. Okay, this is what my audiologist prescribed. And I just saw this new audiologist and he said, wow, you've got some really good low frequency hearing in that ear. You can make a lot of sound out, especially in context. He said, why don't we see if we can amplify that? And he gave me a Phonak. It's a Phonak, it's called Audi, I think, hearing aid. It's kind of a high-end aid. I chose a high-end aid because I'm still working and I still have to do some careful listening. So I figure it's, at least at this point in my life, it's still worth it. Not everybody could afford these aids though. I can't, that's a whole nother discussion.
I
But the
know that was
cost of
one of the
hearing aid
conversations.
is just incredible.
Yeah, that was
But it's a
that was
phone app.
one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was one of the conversations that we had earlier about people trying to afford hearing aids. And
Yeah.
you brought up Phonak, which is the best hearing aid brand. I'm always gonna highly recommend everyone that that's the best hearing aid that you can go for, especially when it comes to technology.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you want to go for.
Yeah.
Name it, it will compatible to your TV, your phone, your laptop, your iPad, you name it, it will connect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm amazed at what it can do compared to my old hearing aids, which couldn't do much. I mean, they had different settings, but I really didn't feel much difference or see much or hear much difference. Whereas with these, I can control it with my phone. I can select different settings. It'll send information to my audiologist so that my audiologist knows what I'm preferring. And he can reprogram my aids based on what I'm preferring on a regular basis. So it's amazing the technology now and
Yes.
really fortunate. Yeah.
And before we close this, does anybody else have any questions? It doesn't look like it. There were a few things that I would like to add before we close this. So there are a couple of upcoming events that we have coming, and I'm sure many of you know already. So next weekend, May 3rd, Friday at 6:05 p.m., the Worcester Red Sox, I'm not sure you guys are familiar with it, is a AAA minor league system, and they are hosting a deaf and hard of hearing awareness night. And I will be sending you guys a link via email. Is on Facebook, social media, and the link is in there for you guys to purchase tickets. And I really hope all of you could join us because it will be an amazing event to go to, and especially for all of us to be involved with the deaf and hard of hearing community. With that being said, there's another event coming up on May 8th, I believe, right, Carrie?
Sue, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. Okay, May 8th, sorry, my allergies are going nuts tonight. On May 8th, we're having a program on basic emergency preparedness and safety, especially for people with hearing loss. Waltham Police and Fire Department will come and, kind of talk to us. We're going to really basically turn this into a discussion. I know the last time we did this program, they learned as much from us as we did from them. So, that's just the gist of it. If anybody has anything they'd like to add to it, just get a hold of me and I'll be glad to put it into the program. But it's May 8th and it's I think we're going to start at 6:30 again.
So Sue, we have a Zoom link, registration's required. We've sent out a registration link, but if anyone has not received that, please just reach out to us at here at Boston at Gmail, and we can send you the link, or you can find it on our social media or website. We also have one more event. Brad, would you mind talking to that?
Oh yeah, sure. So I work for the Wilmington Memorial Library, and I'm hosting a class about the apps I use for my hearing aids. So it's an in-person event. So if you are in Wilmington, please stop by. It's Monday, May 13th at 6:30. It is a limited class. I think there's 12 seats. Let me see if I can paste the link. Yeah, there it is. So I pasted the link to the registration form in the chat. But if you don't get that, it's you can just go to the library's website, wilmlibrary.org. Then there's an events button on the right, and you can find it there. I have a few tips what I use, but I have a Oticon hearing aid. My first set was a Phonak, and then I changed because they had different technology, and I've just always never gone back. So, but everybody has their own preferences. And when I found out that like each company has their own algorithm, so like I hear differently with an Oticon than I did with a Phonak. It's wild. Anyway, so I just wanted to basically get talking about what apps are useful to me, and then if we have enough people with different brands, I hope to start a dialogue.
That's cool. Yeah, I know. They're all different. They have their own algorithm, as you said. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you, Brad. So I think that's it. I'd like to just thank you, Suzanne, for the conversation today. Certainly, I know I've learned and relearned some things, and now the challenge will be to put them into practice. So
Yeah, I did put something in the chat to everyone in the chat just about my website, and if anyone wants to reach out to me with questions or anything else, I'm happy to chat.
excellent.
Thank
Thank
you.
I also put in the chat room the registration link for May 8th Zoom meeting and the link for the Devin Hunter Hearing Awareness Night at the Worcester Red Sox. And as well as my email if you guys have any questions or anything.
Excellent. Well, thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you
again.
so much for having me. I've really enjoyed meeting all of you tonight. And look forward to meeting you again at some future convention somewhere, maybe Phoenix.
Sounds great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you
All right.
so much,
You're
Suzanne.
welcome.
That was amazing. And it was very nice meeting all of you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
you.
Good night.
Bye.